Marie Antoinette, a name synonymous with opulence and tragedy, a figure whose life story has fascinated generations.
Born in Vienna, Austria in 1755, she was the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I. Her birth was celebrated with great joy and anticipation. A Habsburg princess, Marie Antoinette lived a privileged childhood in the grandeur of the Hofburg Palace, surrounded by the splendor of the Austrian court. Surrounded by siblings and immersed in courtly life, she received a typical education for a young noblewoman of the time, which included lessons in etiquette, languages, and the arts. Music, dance, and French language filled her days, preparing her for the sophisticated life she was expected to lead. Little did she know, her destiny lay beyond the borders of Austria, in a land that would soon be engulfed in turmoil. It lay in France, a country on the brink of revolution, where the seeds of change were already being sown. Marie Antoinette's carefree days were numbered, as her life was about to take a dramatic turn. As was customary for royal families, her future was a pawn in the game of international politics, with her marriage being a strategic move. Her marriage would forge alliances and secure power, a union designed to strengthen ties between Austria and France. France, the age-old rival of Austria, was chosen as her destination, a place where she would face immense challenges. The young princess was to marry the heir to the French throne, Louis Auguste, the Dauphin of France, a match that was both a privilege and a burden. Her fate was sealed. She was to become the Queen of France, a role that would define her legacy and lead her to an extraordinary yet tragic destiny. At the tender age of 14, Marie Antoinette bid farewell to her family and her homeland. She was leaving behind everything she had ever known, stepping into a future filled with uncertainty and immense responsibility. She embarked on a journey to a foreign land, where she was expected to embrace a new culture and secure her place in a court known for its grandeur and intrigue. The journey was long and arduous, filled with both anticipation and trepidation. The young Dauphine arrived in France to much fanfare. The people of France were eager to welcome their new princess, hoping she would bring prosperity and joy. The French court, renowned for its splendor and extravagance, welcomed her with open arms. The opulence of Versailles was unlike anything she had ever seen.
Life at Versailles was a whirlwind of balls, banquets, and courtly rituals. Every day brought new challenges and expectations, but also opportunities to shine. With my grace and charm, I quickly became a darling of the French court. My presence was celebrated, and I was often the center of attention. My beauty and fashion sense set trends. I became a fashion icon, influencing styles and tastes across the country. The French people, initially enamored by their young Dauphine, saw in me a symbol of hope and renewal. They believed I would bring a fresh perspective to the monarchy.
But beneath the surface of glittering festivities, a storm was brewing. Unbeknownst to many, the seeds of discontent were being sown among the populace. The French monarchy, oblivious to the growing discontent among its people, continued its lavish lifestyle, unaware of the seismic shift that was about to occur. The extravagance of the court stood in stark contrast to the struggles of the common people. In 1774, tragedy struck. King Louis XV died, and Marie Antoinette's husband ascended to the throne as King Louis XVI. The young couple, barely out of their teens, suddenly found themselves at the helm of one of the most powerful nations in Europe. At the age of 19, Marie Antoinette became the Queen of France. She was thrust into a world of opulence and grandeur, but also one of immense scrutiny and expectation. The weight of the crown sat heavy on her young shoulders. The pressures of her new role were immense, and the eyes of the nation were constantly upon her. The young queen, thrust into a position of immense power and responsibility, struggled to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics. The intrigues and machinations of the court were a far cry from the carefree life she had known in Austria.
As a kind but indecisive ruler, I relied heavily on my advisors, often finding myself overwhelmed by the complexities of governance, leaving Marie feeling isolated and alone. The grandeur of the palace often felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in a life of loneliness.
I sought solace in the company of close friends and indulged in extravagant entertainments, trying to escape the pressures of my royal duties, further fueling the public's perception of me as out of touch with the realities of French life. My attempts to find joy were often misunderstood and criticized.
The seeds of discontent, sown by years of economic hardship and social inequality, were beginning to sprout. The gap between the opulence of the court and the struggles of the common people was growing ever wider. France, on the brink of a revolution, would soon test the limits of its monarchy and the resilience of its young queen. The storm that was brewing would change the course of history forever. Unrest grew in the streets of Paris. The French people, burdened by poverty and famine, looked upon the opulence of Versailles with increasing resentment.
Marie Antoinette, known for her lavish spending on fashion, jewels and entertainment, became a target of public anger. The once adoring crowds now saw her as a symbol of the monarchy's indifference to their plight.
Rumors and gossip spread like wildfire. The queen was accused of being frivolous, promiscuous, and even treasonous. Pamphlets depicting her as Madame Deficit circulated widely, further tarnishing her reputation and fueling the flames of revolution. France, once the epitome of absolute monarchy, was teetering on the edge of chaos. The lavish lifestyle of the ruling elite stood in stark contrast to the poverty and despair of the masses. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, one that would forever alter the course of French history.
On July 14, 1789, the storm broke. The Bastille, a symbol of royal authority, was stormed by an angry mob. The French Revolution had begun.
The storming of the Bastille sent shockwaves throughout France and beyond. It marked the collapse of royal authority and the rise of popular sovereignty. The French people, inspired by the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, were determined to overthrow the monarchy and create a new society based on justice and fairness.
Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, caught in the maelstrom of revolution, faced a perilous situation. They were virtual prisoners in their own palace. The Queen, once a symbol of elegance and grace, now found herself a target of hatred and scorn.
The revolution, fueled by the desperation of the masses, was spiraling out of control. France was about to enter one of the bloodiest and most turbulent periods in its history. As the revolution raged on, the royal family's situation became increasingly precarious. Fearing for their lives, they made a daring attempt to escape from Paris in 1791. Their plan, fraught with danger and uncertainty, was to reach the loyalist stronghold of Montmedy and rally support for the monarchy.
However, our escape was thwarted in the town of Varennes. I was disguised as a commoner, but I was recognized, and the royal family was arrested and brought back to Paris under guard.
This failed escape attempt further eroded public support for the monarchy. The king and queen, once regarded as divinely appointed rulers, were now seen as traitors to the revolution. Their fate, once secure in the gilded cage of Versailles, now hung precariously in the balance. In 1792, the monarchy was abolished, and France was declared a republic. Louis XVI was put on trial for treason against the French people. Found guilty, he was executed on January 21, 1793. Marie Antoinette, now known as Widow Capet, was separated from her children and imprisoned in the Conciergerie, a former royal palace turned into a prison.
Stripped of my title and dignity, I endured months of solitary confinement, knowing that my own trial and execution were imminent.
The trial of Marie Antoinette began on October 14, 1793. Accused of treason, conspiracy with foreign powers, and even incest with her son, she faced a tribunal determined to make her a scapegoat for the excesses of the monarchy. Despite a spirited defense, she was found guilty on all charges. Her fate was sealed. She was condemned to die on the guillotine. On October 16, 1793, Marie Antoinette was taken from her cell and transported to the Place de la Révolution, where the guillotine awaited. Her hair was shorn, and she was dressed in a plain white gown.
As I ascended the scaffold, I showed the same dignity and composure that had characterized me throughout my life.
At 12:15 p.m. the blade fell, ending the life of the last Queen of France. Her death, a defining moment in the French Revolution, marked the end of an era. The monarchy, once thought to be invincible, had fallen. The old order was swept away, replaced by the tumultuous forces of republicanism. Marie Antoinette's execution, a stark reminder of the brutality and chaos of the revolution, continues to fascinate and horrify us to this day. Marie Antoinette's life and death have been the subject of countless books, films, and plays. Was she a victim of circumstance, a pawn in the game of international politics, or did her actions contribute to her own downfall? The debate continues to rage on. What is certain is that her story remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power, the fickle nature of public opinion, and the human cost of revolution. Marie Antoinette's legacy is complex and multifaceted. She was both a product of her time and a symbol of the excesses of the French monarchy. Her story serves as a reminder of the importance of social justice, the dangers of unchecked power, and the enduring power of myth and legend.